This is OOU-GES 105, the Modern Agriculture and Rural Development. Today is the first week, and so we're going to be having overview of agriculture, the lesson 1. I am Dr. Mrs. Odusanya. Welcome to the class. Agriculture, we're going to be looking at an overview of agriculture. Historical development of agriculture in Nigeria. Agriculture has been playing a key role in development of human civilization. What is agriculture? Agriculture is the system of planting and rearing of animals for production and also for some other raw materials, for the supply of raw materials for human endeavor. Until the Industrial Revolution, agriculture has been the major key in meeting the needs of the human population in Nigeria. Technological development and improved technique are steadily improved. Technology about 10,000 years ago, agriculture has expanded vastly in geographical coverage. It has expanded in use, and also new technologies have been introduced to improve crop integration and animal production. Agricultural practices such as irrigation, various farming systems like crop rotation, the use of fertilizer, the use of pesticides, all of these have been developed over a long period of time, and they have increased in leaps and bounds in the last century. The history of agriculture has played a major role in human history. There is no way we want to talk about man and we will not talk about agriculture. Even in the early day system, agriculture has been widely accepted to increasing the socio-economic status of every country and individual. Wealth building and militaristic specialization, all of these are rarely seen in hunter-gathering cultures, in societies which practice agriculture. Farmers became capable of producing food beyond the needs of their own family. That is, when men move from production of crops and rearing of animals only for their family, which is also called subsistence farming, to large-scale production to meet the needs of the whole country or cities or town. Historians and anthropologists have also long argued that the development of agriculture made civilization possible. That is, agriculture has contributed to increase in civilization. Agricultural history of Nigeria is intertwined with political history, and this is discussed broadly in the context of varying constitutional framework in the colonial era, in the internal self-government and post-1960 periods after independence. Agriculture has played various roles at various times. Crop production, we're looking at it from different areas of agriculture. Crop production. The period of the colonial administration in Nigeria, 1861 to 1960, was punctuated by rather an ad hoc attention of agricultural development. During the era, considerable emphasis was placed on research and extension services. The first notable activity of the era was the establishment of a botanical research station in Lagos. There was a botanical research that was stationed in Lagos by Sir Clyde MacDonald in 1893. This was followed by the acquisition of 10.4-kilometer land in 1899 by the British Cotton Growing Association at Ibadan for experimental work on cotton. The site's location was named this was introduced into agricultural school at Ibadan, where the Education and Agricultural Development cooperated to train both teachers responsible for the management of the school farms and agricultural assistance to the Department of Agriculture. A veterinary school was established at Vaughan in early 1940 to train Nigerians for animal health work. Okay, still looking at some other things that was done in the area of crop production. More plantation experimental area was established in Ibadan in 1912. A Department of Agriculture was also established in the south and northern Nigeria, but the activities of the department were virtually suspended between 1913 and 1921 as a result of the First World War. In the later parts of 1990, between late 1930 and the mid-40s, there was significant intensification and expansion of research activity that culminated into extension and training programs of agricultural developments, AD. Additional facilities for training of junior staffs in agriculture were provided, as well as scholarship for agricultural students at Yaba Higher College and Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture in Trinidad. During the Second World War in 1939 to 1945, all this Second World War led to the reduction or slow activities of the Department of Agriculture, and so the rate at which they were able to influence civilization at that period of time were reduced because there was war. Production of export crops like palm produce, rubber, which could not be obtained from Malaysia as a result of Japanese war activities, and food items such as sugar, wheat, milk, egg, vegetables, Irish potato, rice, also increased due to the war. These food items could not be imported into the country in large quantity. Therefore, indigenous farmers decided to go into the production of these crops. A special production section of the Department of Agriculture was set up to deal with the production of these itemized export crops like palm, rubber, and then some food items like sugar, wheat, milk, vegetables, and Irish potato and rice. On the research side, attention was largely devoted to the possibility of evolving permanent system of agriculture that were capable of replacing rotational bush farming system. And so the department was created during this period of time called West Africa Institute for Oil Palm Research in Benin. This was started. Cocoa Research Institute was also established and encouraged in Ibadan at more plantation, Owena near Ondo and Onigambari near Ibadan. These areas were known for cocoa research work. Achievements of the period, during this period of alien cotton in the south. Rice was cultivated in large quantity in Sokoto, Niger, Ilorin, Abeokuta, and Indo provinces. The introduction of wheat cultivation in the north was also started. The expansion of the production of export crops, that is, crops that are taken out of the country, such as cocoa, oil palm, granules, were also increased. Development of agricultural implements, as well as designing of farm implements, was also established and increased in leaps and bounds. The period of internal self-government, when we have a government that is within the country, in 1951 to 1960, regionalization of the Department of Agriculture take place, and a director was appointed, and an Inspector General of Agriculture was also appointed for each region. In 1954, the post, that is before this establishment of Inspector General of Agriculture, the post was abolished in 1954. It started in 1951 and ran through 3 years, and then it was abolished in 1954. The Federal Department of Agricultural Research was retained since constitutional provisions placed agricultural research on the concurrent legislative list. Quickly, we want to look at the livestock production, the history of agriculture in livestock production. When we talk about livestock production, we talk about rearing of animals. This livestock production was dominated by nomadic pastoralism in Nigeria long before the advent of the British colonial administration. So, in livestock production, we started talking about nomadic pastoralism, which was the first thing about livestock production in Nigeria. Afterwards, Nigeria Veterinary Development was then established in 1914, which has its headquarters in Zaria, Kaduna State. In 1924, a small veterinary laboratory was established in OOU-GES for production of rinderpest serum. This rinderpest was a disease that was affecting some of the livestock, and so a lab was established to produce a vaccine. Increased field services raised the demand on the laboratory, so a lot of work began to take place within the laboratory. This further enhanced the production of livestock in the environment. Regions was appreciated in producing more vaccines, and livestock institutes were also established. A scheme was started at Katsina province for teaching sons of the farmer the best husbandry methods. A veterinary school, like I said, was established in OOU-GES in 1940. The veterinary department played a major role in the early history of livestock production. The Western Nigeria Development Corporation established the Upper Ogun Ranch for the commercial production and distribution of cattle in the eastern region, and the administrative machinery for agricultural development and coordination was also modified. That was the overview of the history of agriculture in Nigeria. Later, we want to look at some efforts that were done or carried out by the agricultural development that was established in Nigeria. The post 1960, after 1960 independence, a lot of things happen in agricultural setting in Nigeria. And so we quickly want to look at few of these things. Attention were paid to commodity exports. After independence, Nigeria government became interested in some commodities that can be exported out of the nation and can also increase the revenue of the country. The utilization of taxation policy by marketing board as an instrument of development finance was also kick-started. In 1962 to 1960, development plan was Nigeria's first national plan, and it has so many objectives, so many reasons for this. Some of the development schemes initiated during the period include what we call farm settlement scheme, where young graduates were established on farm settlements. They were given some grants and they were encouraged to go full into agricultural processes. Two, we have National Accelerated Food Production Program that was launched in 1972. We have what we call Operation Feed the Nation that was launched in 1976 under the former head of state, Obasanjo. River Basin Rural Development Authority was also established in 1976. Green Revolution Program was inaugurated in 1980. The World Bank project also came into being. While each of the above programs sought to improve food production, the ADPs represented the first practical demonstration of the integrated approach to agricultural development in Nigeria. They started, while ADPs, like I mentioned, were targeted as providing food crops, World Bank projects were there to help in grants production, in supplying grants to this farmer to help them in their production. The experiment, which started as a pilot product with World Bank, began to expand over the years. In 1982, for instance, Ekiti, Akoko in 1982, there was an increase in the production because of World Bank funding projects. Roles of agriculture in national development. Roles of agriculture in national development. I want to look at some things that agriculture contributed to the nation. Number one is source of food. Food is very important to man. Food is very important to man and to animals. And so agriculture provided food such as cereals, root crops, tuber crops, fruits, vegetables, and the rest of them. All these are supplied by agriculture. Number two, source of raw materials. Source of raw material. Agriculture supply inputs of raw material for the industries. Supply, for example, hide and skin that were obtained from animals were used to make bags, were used to make some other things like leather. We have textiles were made from cotton. We have tires from rubber and some other household equipment. Cocoa were processed into, cocoa become a raw material process into beverages, coffee, and also oil palm was processed into palm oil. Some of these became raw material for industry. Palm oil, for instance, was used in soap making industry. Number three, it became source of national income. Several of these crops were exported out of the country and they increased the revenue of the nation. employment generation. Number 4, employment generation. So many youths came into agriculture, and so it serves as a source of employment for them. Processors, people that process some of these crops or animal products, they have source of livelihood. Food vendors have source of livelihood. Drivers and transporters that carry these crops and food products from one place to the other are gainfully employed. In fact, about 60 to 70% of the populace depend on agriculture for their employment. Source of foreign exchange earning. Source of foreign exchange earning. Like I mentioned, there are exports of agricultural produce. Exports of agricultural produce to increase the amount of money that was coming into the nation. Okay, the challenges of agriculture in Nigeria. The challenges of agriculture in Nigeria. Despite the number of benefits that were garnered from agriculture in national development, agriculture faces few challenges, and some of these are outlined in the material. We have, for instance, a very big one there is land tenure system. Land tenure system is the method of ownership of the land, how the land is being owned, and these and the constraints that follow. In land tenure system, lands are not owned by individual. All lands belong to the government or to the nation, to the state government. This was promulgated in 1976. However, before the promulgation of this law, lands belong to communities, to families, and it becomes very difficult to access land for agriculture. Also, most of the land that are available are fragmented. They are small in quantity. So you can't have an access to a large land where you can practice mechanized farming. 2, lack of modern implements and machinery. For a very long period of time, a lot of farmers depended on cutlasses and hoes, and this limits the amount of work that can be done on the farm. They have to depend only on their immediate family to carry out this work. Number 3, high cost of inputs. The amounts that individual has to pay to buy seeds, buy fertilizer, buy chemicals like pesticide, and reduces what they can produce. Poor credit facility and financing. Number 4, farmers do not have access to loan. Farmers do not have access to loan. Any bank that will give them loan will require for collateral, and these poor farmers don't have collateral to give, and so it becomes very difficult for them to practice agriculture in large scale. Incidence of pests and diseases. There are a lot of pests and diseases that are affecting their crops, and because there is lack of laboratories to run serum to provide vaccines and pesticides and chemicals for them, or even inability for farmers to actually have funds to purchase these chemicals, the amount of crops that are produced are very, very reduced. Poor transportation and inadequate infrastructural facility, roads, bad roads, lack of motorable roads to various farms makes it difficult for farmers too. Inadequate processing and storage facilities. A lot of crops are wasted or are sold during their season because they lack the ability and capability to store these crops for the off season. They lack the ability to serve them for off season. So farmers are forced to sell at ridiculous prices. Inadequate processing and storage facility, I've mentioned that. Inadequacy of extension workers, poor farmers, majority of them who are illiterate. They cannot handle the knowledge of improved agriculture. They cannot manage, they don't have technological know-how, they don't have the skill to go about this, and unfortunately, trained ADPs, agents that will go to these farmers to teach them were not available. So we have inadequate, they are not enough. There are very few amounts of extension workers all over the nation to assist farmers, to transmit new technologies to farmers, to teach farmers new technology. So this is a challenge to agriculture. Inadequate marketing structure and facility for agricultural produce, which are highly perishable. For instance, when a farmer produces a lot of vegetables and there is no way he could preserve such vegetable for a longer period of time, and these vegetables are perishable under 24, 72 hours, they decay. Once there is no way or method of preserving, farmers tend to lose a lot of their produce. And then the marketing strategy is not well developed. Instability of pricing policies. This is another major problem that farmers have. Nobody is regulating the pricing of the inputs they use. Nobody is also regulating the prices for each of these products. And lastly, that we will look at there is the inconsistency in government policies on agriculture. The governments of the nation have been inconsistent in various policies that have been promulgated towards agriculture. Some of these policies are started, and after few months, few years, they are abolished, especially when there is a change in power. And these policies are not seen through. They are not even enabled to be useful to farmers. All this stands to be a problem, challenge to the development of agriculture in Nigeria. What are the solutions to some of the challenges that we have mentioned? How can we overcome some of these challenges? Number one thing that was done some years ago, like I mentioned when I was talking about land tenure system, is the promulgation of the Land Use Act of 1978. This enabled farmers to be able to access land because every land in Nigeria has been ceded to the federal government or to the state government. So the Land Use Act was one of the ways of overcoming the challenges of land tenure system. Also, fabrication of farm implements were also worked on. A lot of implements in the farm, planters, sprayers, harrow, plow, all of this begin to come into the system. They were brought into the system and they were being subsidized by the government. And this boosts agricultural production. Government should subsidize programs on non-agricultural inputs. That is, the cost of fertilizer should be subsidized so that it will be reachable and easy for farmers to buy. Also, pesticides, vaccines for animal, for livestock, all these should be subsidized. The cost should be reduced so that it becomes accessible to farmers. Banks should be encouraged to give farmers loan at reduced rates and, if possible, without collaterals. Farmers should be encouraged and supported by the government from cooperative societies. Grants should be made available to farmers that belong to these cooperatives, and this will enhance more farm production. Research into pests and diseases should be funded. Research should be funded. Once there is a lot of research going on, looking at different pests, looking at different insects, looking at some problem of the soil, looking at increasing the seed, or increasing the bringing in hybrids of crop, looking at the performance and yield of crops, all this will enhance agriculture. Agrochemicals should also be subsidized. The construction and maintenance of roads. Farmers don't live close to the road. They don't farm too close to the road. They are always in the interiors. So roads leading to these very rural areas should be constructed and maintained. This will ease the transportation of these crops to the end user, to the consumers. Due to perishable and seasonal nature of agricultural produce, storage facilities should be built all over the nation. When there are a lot of creams, silos, a lot of barn all over the country, a lot of processing facilities, a lot of our crops that are usually destroyed or consumed during the season and will not be available off season, some of these crops can be preserved. They can be preserved. Regular training of farmers should also be encouraged. Regular training of farmers should be encouraged. Processing facilities should be made available. Processing facilities should be made available, especially for people that will be interested in the processing units. Governments, as a matter of urgency, should employ graduates of agriculture and encourage them and put them into various settlements to continue and enhance agricultural production. Marketing of agricultural goods should be properly structured, like what is obtainable in developed country, where the government will be able to influence the prices of crops and the inputs. Government should ensure that all agricultural policies are well conceived and implemented, as this will further aid the development of agriculture. In summary, like I said, agriculture is the cultivation of land, and agriculture is vast and multifaceted. It is vast, it is multifaceted, and it is basically divided into so many branches, which include agronomy, crop soil science, horticulture, crop protection. We also have the likes of farm mechanization. We talk about animal husbandry, plants and animal breeding and genetics, farming system, plant nutrition, food technology, agricultural economics, and extension and rural sociology. These are branches of agriculture. And with this, we come to the end of today's class. Thank you.